I've got relatives that feed their kids, that raise their kids. They couldn't cook, they raise their kids off of Hardee's for breakfast, something for lunch, and maybe a Publix sandwich for dinner or something. So if you can cook your own food, it's not only cheaper, but you can control your salt and the intake and things like that. They had before during when this last war started, you guys were involved in, I heard they took a poll of how many people were actually, males, were combat ready. If you figure anybody under 18, nobody over 60, and then if you take out the people that are diabetic and have physical things that keep them from the military anyway, and then you take out 40% of obese people, now those people can lose weight, and we didn't have a big fighting force to draw from, whereas some other countries might. So it could be a problem at some point. Lower your total fat intake. A high fat intake has been involved. Well, did I say that? Okay, yeah. Increased consumption of foods that are rich in vitamins A and C. Beta-carotene, a precursor in vitamin A, is found in dark green leafy vegetables, carrots, and various fruits. General rule is all the good colors and fruits and vegetables, eat them. These vitamins are called antioxidants because in cells they prevent the formation of free radicals, which are organic ions that have an unpaired electron that can possibly damage the DNA. Vitamin C also prevents the conversion of nitrates and nitrites into carcinogenic nitrosamines in the digestive tract. When we talked about that with cold cuts and hot dogs, mostly ham products. Include vegetables from the cabbage family in the diet. What is that? Includes cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kohlrabi, and cauliflower. To this day, I still don't know what kohlrabi is. Maybe it's not big around here. Maybe it doesn't grow here. Maybe we don't eat it here. I think someone told me one time it was similar to like lettuce or something. But I think broccoli is about the perfect food. It's got a lot of protein in it. It fights cancer. It tastes good. Just one. Have you all ever had broccoli Italian style? You steam it, soften it up, boil it like you do, drain the water, add olive oil, fresh lemon, garlic, and you'll never go back to putting cheese over it again. I went to my first ex. She was a Southern lady from up in Atlanta, and the first time I went to the family Thanksgiving dinner, I made Italian broccoli for them, and she set it out on the table, and they just looked at it. They'd never seen anything like that before. She was smart enough. She got up, went in the other room, found some cheese, melted, poured it over there, brought it back in, and they ate it all. But try it sometime. It's much healthier that way. It's very good. It's good, very good for you. Brussels sprout. I like Brussels sprouts. Cauliflower, Italian cauliflower. A lot of people like cauliflower. Steam it, boil it, soften it up in a separate pan. Saute your garlic and onions and olive oil. Add that into it. Mix it all up. Add a little bit of tomato sauce. It has you mash it up. It has a consistency of a mashed potato, and it's very good. So for people that don't like cauliflower, everybody I've served that Italian cauliflower to are like, wow. But anyway, eating things that are healthy, we all know about that. Final thing listed: be moderate in the consumption of alcohol. I mean, it's legal. It's been legal here for a long time. People who drink and smoke are at unusually high risk for cancers of the mouth, larynx, and esophagus, as well as other things. So, any questions here? Okay, the last page. Let's look at a couple of things on the last page of the handout. Types of cancer treatment. Immunotherapy, I listed as the first one, has the best. Let's back up a little bit. Up until about, what was this, 2018? Up until about 10 years ago, even until about 2010, we were fighting cancer the same way we were fighting it 20, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. It's to kill try to kill the fastest growing cells in the body. I had an oncologist explain to me like this: suppose there's 100 people in a train station, Penn Central, whatever. They're out there in the lobby mingling around. 3 of them are bad characters you got to get rid of, but all you have is a scattergun. That's what fighting cancer is like. Targeting the bad cells to try to kill the bad cancer cells without killing your good cells is very hard to do. It seemed to me like it's being reactive, being proactive. You wait until the cancer cells divide, and then you try to knock it down Immunotherapy is a treatment that uses the body's own immune system to help fight cancer. It plays a critical, important role in the treatment of cancer. For decades, doctors have used different therapies and treatments to enhance the immune system in this way. Immunotherapy approaches for cancer are divided into two categories, active and passive. While most treatments were non-specific until a few years ago, research and clinical studies have led to more specific immunotherapy treatments for cancer. In fact, immunotherapy for cancer has become a more commonly used treatment approach thanks to the development of monoclonal antibodies with relatively unique anti-tumor specificity. What they're basically doing is they're taking a sample of your tumor, your cancer cells. Now, you and I might have the same cancer and it's going to act differently because we're different people, right? But what they do is they take your own body, your cancer in your body, and they get your immune system to knock it back, even before it divides. So you can have a tumor this big and it can shrink it. So immunotherapy is relatively new. It really shocks me that we, like I said, up until 2010, 2011, we were still fighting cancer the way we did in 1970. It was trying to kill the fastest growing cells in the body. That's what chemotherapy does, right? With chemotherapy, it's a battle. You're trying to kill off the cancer cells without killing the individual. So for chemotherapy treatments, for certain cancers, they have a different regimen. It usually goes 3 weeks. So let's say if you have a certain type of cancer, they know chemotherapy A usually works best, they're going to use it first. If it doesn't, they use it for 3 weeks. If it doesn't work, they go to B. They use it for 3 weeks. If it doesn't work, we're getting to the less effective ones. They got another one, C. The third one they try to use. They usually only have 3 or 4 to do. We've all had loved ones die of cancer. I remember thinking, wait a minute, if the first one's not working, it's not working. We're a week and a half in. Why do we keep it? Why do we have to wait 3 weeks before we start the next one? This is my loved one here. And they say, well, we can't. If we start it now, we'll kill them. A lot of people do die from the chemotherapy versus the cancer. You're trying to give the person as much chemicals to kill those cells without killing them. That's why people with chemotherapy, remember, it kills the fastest growing cells in the body. That's why they lose their hair, skin. Those are the fastest growing cells. The cells that line the intestinal tract, they slough off. That's why people get so it has all these bad side effects. Chemotherapy is the most common method of treating cancer. Like I said, with more than half of diagnosed individuals being treated through chemotherapy. Now keep in mind, a lot of times they're going to use immunotherapy, chemotherapy, radiation, and maybe surgery. Ideally, the best thing to do is cut it out. If it's a unique tumor located somewhere, cut that tumor out and the area around it. But we've talked about things spread to lymph nodes and they spread to other areas. And what happens if it's not a nice, neat tumor? Some cancers are diffuse through tissue. Are you familiar with the mesentery? The mesentery is that clear stuff that holds your intestines together. Animals getting a cancer of that. What are you going to do? Cut out your entire digestive tract? That's in the tissue. So I mean, there's certain things. If it's in a tissue instead of a thing, it's going to be harder to treat. Cancer cells with faulty DNA do not recover normally. Chemotherapy drugs can be injected into the veins or a body cavity, or they can be taken orally, a pill. Some people are frightened by the side effects, which include low red blood cell and white blood cell counts, low platelet counts, nausea, vomiting, hair loss, fatigue. Many of these side effects, however, today can be prevented or controlled, allowing for much easier treatment than in years past. So things are better now than they have been. Radiation therapy for some things, it only works for some things, also known as radiotherapy, is careful use of high-energy radiation to treat cancer. Remember, you would think, wait a minute, radiation causes cancer, but if it's highly focused, it can kill. Radiotherapy works like chemotherapy, relying on the faulty recovery mechanism of cancer cells to ultimately destroy them. Radiation can also be used to relieve pain in cancer patients. Side effects of radiation therapy include decrease in white blood cells, fatigue, skin reactions, loss of appetite. If you're losing white blood cells, your immune system is going to be really knocked back so that you can get something else really quickly. Surgery is a primary form of cancer treatment that involves a physical excision of the tumor. It is used by itself as well as in combination with other forms. Like I said, they usually use several forms. We also have biological therapy, hormone therapy. There's different ways now. I think I listed them in the order of use. Let's look at the final page there. The main categories of cancer, it's based on their origin. Melanomas are types of skin cancer. Forms from melanocytes, pigment-containing cells in the skin. Causes the majority of death. 75% of deaths associated with skin cancer or melanomas. Carcinomas, cancers that begin in the skin or in the tissues that line or cover internal organs. You've heard of lymphosarcomas and carcinomas. Well, that's sarcoma. That's different. I'm sorry. That's next. Okay, sarcomas, cancer that begins in bone, cartilage, fat muscle, blood vessels, or other connective supportive tissues. Those could be lymphosarcomas or leukemia. I mentioned that earlier, how insidious. It hits children, hits all of us. Cancer that starts in blood-forming tissue such as bone marrow and causes large numbers of abnormal blood cells to be produced and enter the blood. Leukemia, you have acute leukemia, chronic leukemia. When I lived up in Athens years ago, there was a story about a young man up there. He was an undergraduate. His parents came to see him on a Friday night. They came to see him for a football game. He came Friday night. He was complaining he was having a cold and stuff. They went to the football game on Saturday. They stayed Saturday night. They went home Sunday. He was dead by the end of the week. Acute leukemia. I had a loved one 5 days from diagnosis to death. That's rare. Mostly leukemia. That acute leukemia can. But it's a bad one again. That's cancer of the blood. You can't surgically remove it. You can't take your blood out, right? Lymphomas and myelomas, cancers that begin in the cells of the immune system. Really tough. Your immune system. HIV, we'll talk about that next week. HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, actually attacks lymphocytes, which are cells that are in for your lymphatic system, which is your immune system. So that is so insidious, it attacks only the cells that are used to fight off any foreign substances in your body. It attacks those cells. But when we talk about that, that's people cannot be treated with HIV. Up until the mid-90s, it was a death sentence. In the late 70s, when it came around to the mid-90s, it was a death sentence. Now they've got these cocktails and drugs that can keep you in the second stage where you never go to the third stage. AIDS is the disease is HIV, the virus. AIDS is the symptoms that happen. Classic example, Magic Johnson. He has HIV, but he's being treated for it. He's a healthy man. He's still around. Up until I have a cousin the same way. He got diagnosed when he got out of prison the last time at age 40. And he's almost 70 now. It's funny, well not funny, but up until about 6 or 8 years ago, they didn't care if he smoked, drank, or what. They were keeping him alive. Now all of a sudden, they're able to keep people alive longer through treatments like this. They started worrying about his smoking and his eating, and now he's got to watch his habits. So maybe he'll outlast me. We were all worried about him for a long time. I'll tell you, I had another friend that was in that stage too, though, up in Atlanta, and he got bored. He just got bored and started drinking a quart of vodka a day, went back to smoking a couple packs of cigarettes and doing drugs, and his HIV kicked into the third stage. He died of AIDS. He didn't have to. Central nervous system cancers that begin in the tissues of the brain and spinal cord. I mentioned some of those earlier. So, cancer, I don't think we're going to find a cure for it. If you look back in the literature, the name cancer doesn't go back that far. A couple hundred years, but it's been around for quite a while. We're never going to cure it. It mutates. So if we get a cure for one type of cancer, that same cancer will mutate to something else. But we are getting much better at treating it, remember, and that's okay. If you can't cure something, you can treat it. Remember, treat means you can live the rest of your life being treated, taking medicines and take care of yourself. Curing's ideal. A lot of times cancer will come back. I've known people that had cancer when they were 30. And they say it's going to come back. Some might not come back till they're 75. Like I say, some people can do anything they want and never get cancer. Some people can be as healthy as they can be and develop cancer. So, are there any questions about this? I think we've all been affected by loved ones with cancer, and frequently when I have a class, there's usually someone in the class who is a cancer survivor. So, alrighty, I think that'll do it for this cancer lecture. If there's no questions, guess that'll do it.